And welcome to the Upside Sports Network preview of the AL Central for the year 2022. Now, there's been a lot of storylines all off-season long, lockout and everything to deal with, but everything's finally ready to go. Opening day is right around the corner, so we'll see what type of success these teams are going to have. In the American League Central last year, the White Sox were the class of the division. There's a bunch of middling teams after that. Now, the White Sox again look to be the promising team in this division, so we'll see if that holds true. However, the Twins have made a lot of additions this year, mainly getting Sonny Gray for their pitching staff. Most importantly, though, they acquired Carlos Correa on a 3-year, $105 million contract with an opt out after the first and second year. So we'll see if the Twins find some success this year. With all that said, let's get it all started. First team on the list is going to be the Cleveland Guardians. Yes, they're no longer the Cleveland Indians. It is the Cleveland Guardians official, and they're going to be able to take opening day or take the field opening day for the first time as the Guardians. Looking at their team, everything revolves around Jose Ramirez from an offensive side and Shane Bieber from the pitching side. They've always seemed to develop young starting pitchers, and they've done so again. They have Aaron Savali, Zach Plesac. There was some rumors that they may move him after some controversies that he had off the field last year. And then as far as the rest of the rotation rounds out with Cal Quantrill, had a nice year last year, and of course the high touted prospect one time, Tristan McKenzie. From the offensive side of things, Ahmed Rosario was the main piece of the Francisco Lindor trade. He took over the shortstop position after Lindor went to the Mets. Lindor has not lived up to things so far with New York, so maybe the Guardians were correct, but he's still a vastly superior player compared to Ahmed Rosario, Andres Jimenez, who's also going to be in the starting lineup this year for the Guardians. But like I said, everything revolves around Jose Ramirez. I do expect trade talks to begin with Jose Ramirez pretty much now. We already heard some rumors before or after the lockout ended that the Toronto Blue Jays were looking at upgrading third base and second base. They upgraded their third base position by acquiring Matt Chapman. They looked at trading Kevin Biggio plus in order to get Jose Ramirez. I fully expect those conversations to resume as the season progresses. I don't expect Jose Ramirez to finish the season as a Guardian. The rest of the team, though, has a lot of youth on it. We're looking at Andres Jimenez taking over that second base position. Outfield spots are all young. There is some rumors out there that they'll bring in some outfield help via free agency, that kind of a thing. It sounds like the general manager, though, has cooled those rumors down, basically saying they want to go young at that position. The rumored player that they were looking at getting was Michael Conforto. He's the last big free agent left on the board. After a down year with the Mets, Conforto still received a qualifying offer, so he could be looking for a one-year deal to try to re-enter the market after he reestablishes his value this year. Let us know in the comment section what you think is going to happen and with this team, where you think the Guardians are going to finish. But for me, I don't see them winning this division, but we'll see where this prediction is going to end up at the end of the video. Emmanuel Clase, the guy they got from the Rangers, is still going to be their closer. He was in contention for Rookie of the Year. He should do very well. As far as things on the horizon for the Guardians, they still have Bradley Zimmer. Mercado could play there in the outfield as well. Naylor is back at the big league team this year after fracturing his leg and missing over the last 8.5 months due to that injury. So we'll see if the Guardians can catch some lightning in a bottle with some of their young players in the outfield. The next team in the rundown is going to be the Kansas City Royals. The whole conversation with the Kansas City Royals from a talent perspective begins and ends with Bobby Witt Jr. Now, he is knocking the cover off the ball this spring, already has a couple home runs. The first big league at bat or spring training at bat that he had against Jack Leiter, the Rangers' top prospect that they just got in the draft last year. He knocked the cover off the ball as well. Hard hit single to start out Jack Leiter's professional career. So you can kind of see the level of talent that he has. I fully expect him to break camp with the Royals this year. But this team is going to be at the bottom of the division, if I had to guess. Whit Merrifield is probably your most likely trade candidate. They've tried for years and years and years to get him out of Kansas City. Other teams have. Boston, most notably, the Cubs when they were going after the World Series, but were unsuccessful. The top of the lineup for Whit Merrifield, Lopez, and Perez did find some success, and I expect that to continue this year. But Merrifield is probably the most likely trade candidate that will be moved at the deadline by the Royals. The rest of the lineup, the Royals have gone after some aging prospect people like Andrew Benintendi for the Red Sox. They lost out on Jorge Soler, who ended up winning the World Series with the Braves last year, won the World Series MVP award last year as well. So, whoops, I guess they should have gotten a little bit more back for him, but you can't, go back in the past and make up for it. As far as the rest of the lineup, they got some veterans to kind of mix in here. Carlos Santana is still the first baseman there. Hunter Dozier had a nice year last year. Alberto Mondesi, another prospect that had some success at shortstop last year. We'll see if that continues. On the pitching side, Zach Greinke was the addition that they made, and we'll see what kind of success he has as he gets a little bit older. This might be the final year for Zach Greinke. Played for the Astros the last few years, did win a world title there. Played for the Dodgers, won a Cy Young there. Then he moved on to the Diamondbacks, where, of course, he was moved on to the Astros after that. That contract that he signed with the Diamondbacks was just way too cumbersome for them to handle. But Zach Greinke's had a very nice year, won a Cy Young with the Royals back in the day, 10 years ago or so. So we'll see if he can recapture some of that youth, but maybe this is the final year for him. Over the past few years, he's been heavily invested in the front office maneuverings of many of the franchises he's played for. So we'll see if he does the same with the Royals. I fully expect him to take over a GM role at some point in the future. Beyond that, they've got nothing but youth behind them. Keller, Singer, Lynch, and Bubic are going to be the starters behind Greinke this year. Whether or not one of those other starters makes the opening day start may or may not happen, but I think out of nostalgia, they'll go with Greinke and see what kind of fan reaction he has, possibly sell some extra tickets by bringing in Greinke. It's a 1-year, $13 million deal that they signed him to. But again, like I said, I expect this team not to do well this year. It's all going to be about Bobby Witt Jr. and building for the future and possibly getting another high draft pick. This team is going to be looking forward to the midsummer's draft anyway, see if they can get one of the best players available, possibly a Drew Jones to play in the outfield along with Bobby Witt Jr. and a core of Mondesi, those type of players. That could be the next big Royals core. The next team on the list is going to be the Detroit Tigers, another team that did make some improvements. However, they're still in the rebuilding phase of their franchise. A.J. Hinch, a World Series champion from the Houston Astros. Then, of course, he was suspended for a year by Major League Baseball due to the cheating scandal, the banging on the trash cans, those kinds of things. And so he had to basically, he didn't want anything else to do there. The ownership there wanted him gone as well. The players that he had with the Astros think very highly of A.J. Hinch, and the rest of the industry did as well. That's why he was only gone out of baseball for a year or two, and now he finds himself in Detroit. He was able to lure one of the top 5 free agent shortstops available in Javier Baez to the Tigers as well. There was some thought that Carlos Correa may end up here on a 10-year, $275 million contract as the offseason began. The lockout happened. Carlos Correa changed agents. It became clear that the Tigers were not willing to play at that price tag, 10 years, $325, and so they are going to stick with Javier Baez as their shortstop. The youth that they have on their team, Spencer Torkelson is where this begins and ends as well. Torkelson, a number 1 pick for the Tigers a few years back anyway, takes over first base. I expect Cabrera to move into that DH role, kind of that nostalgic piece again for the Tigers, sell some tickets, those kinds of things. Badu's going to be your leadoff hitter. Baez is probably going to be your number 3 hitter, though, for you. If he can establish himself as more of a contact hitter, a little bit less swing and miss, maybe that core comes together a little bit quicker. Tucker Barnhart is now your catcher. And then, of course, you have Riley Green out there as well as far as a young prospect. From a starting staff perspective, they bring in Eduardo Rodriguez from the Boston Red Sox to complement the young core that they have of Mize, Skobal, Manning. And they also brought in Pineda at the end of the offseason as well. I don't expect this rotation to hold up over 162 games, which is why I don't believe the Tigers are for real contending for a playoff position this year. But you should see some vast improvements, especially with Hinch knowing how to handle a roster, being able to mix and match platoon players. The Astros had a lot of success the way they handled things, going to analytics, and I fully expect the Tigers to embrace that. Avila is still the GM, president of baseball operations there, so we'll see if he has a little bit more success with A.J. Hinch as the manager now. Looking at the closer, they still have the young player in Gregory Soto at the back ends. Their bullpen should be okay. We'll see if they can improve and get some of those young hurlers up into the big leagues and get some experience for them. This year is all about development for the Tigers, so we'll see how it goes. Javier Baez, maybe he blends well with that roster, and we'll see if he finds some stability after having the Cubs trade him to the Mets last year, and then the Mets, of course, not re-signing him. So maybe some stability is just what the doctor ordered for a player like Javier Baez. Well, next team on the list is going to be my Minnesota Twins. They're one of my favorite teams, always have been since I was a young kid. Born and raised in South Dakota and then came on down to Texas. But Minnesota Twins have always had a piece of my heart anyway. Byron Buxton, great player, possibly even better than Mike Trout, the best player in the game. But he doesn't stay healthy enough to be able to prove it for an extended period of time. So you can't really make that argument until he's on the field for a full season or two. The contract that they did get him to was very beneficial for the team. That if he is able to stay healthy, that's a very cheap contract for them. If he's not, Buxton at least still gets some security for him and his family. Carlos Correa is the big piece that the Minnesota Twins acquired this year. 3 years, $105 million deal with opt-outs after the first and second year. Kirilloff is going to have some playing time this year, playing in left field. They do have Polanco as well. The one trade that they did make that was a little bit puzzling at the time before Correa was signed is trading away Josh Donaldson and a player they had just acquired for Mitch Garver and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa from the Rangers. They moved them on to the New York Yankees for Gio Urshela and Gary Sanchez. After that trade was announced, it was rumored that they'd be in on Trevor Story because they didn't think they'd be able to go for a 10-year, $325 contract with Carlos Correa. Story ends up going to the Boston Red Sox, 6 years, $140 million contract there. They go after a little bit better player in Correa. The leadership that he brings to that team, he becomes their three-hole hitter as well. Great player for them, so we'll see if they can get him to a long-term contract after the season because I fully expect him to opt out after the year is over. Gary Sanchez was the puzzling piece for me. Mitch Garver was a better catcher, better hitter as well over the last few years. Gary Sanchez was nothing but a pass ball machine, doesn't throw out runners on base. The batting average hasn't been there. The home runs haven't been there. He's just been a player on a slow decline, but he does have a lot of potential in that bat. Maybe the Minnesota Twins think they can see, or that they've seen something in him that they can correct and get him to reach that potential again. That remains to be seen. But for me, Mitch Garver was the better catcher. Was it really worth giving him up in order to get Isaiah Kiner-Falefa and then eventually flipping him to offload the money of Josh Donaldson? Ultimately, getting Carlos Correa is the proof in the pudding. They got the man that they were ultimately hoping to get, or at least rewarded with getting anyway. The Yankees, however, spent about the same amount of money and didn't get him. One of the few times the Twins have beaten the Yankees for a player in free agency. Looking at the lineup itself, Ryan Jeffers figures to split time with Sanchez at the catcher position. Luis Arraez is going to play at third base and second base with Jorge Polanco. They'll kind of flip around. Max Kepler had a down year last year. Maybe he rebounds this year. He really needs to take that next step forward in his career with free agency coming soon for him. From the rotation side, they made the acquisition of Sonny Gray from the Cincinnati Reds. The acquisition price was not a lot. They only traded their number 7 pick, a first-round pick from a year ago. Not a lot to give up. Sounds like a lot, but it isn't for a player of Sonny Gray's caliber. He's been traded by a number of teams now. This is going to be his 4th team, I believe. Started with the A's, went to the Yankees. The Yankees didn't work out. He rebounded his career with the Reds, and he's still got another year of control after this. So they're only sending out one prospect in return for a player like Sonny Gray to take over the ace role of that rotation. Great job by the management staff, the front office staff of the Minnesota Twins. Looking at the rest of that rotation, they did bring in Dylan Bundy as well to kind of solidify that rotation. Kenta Maeda is still there, but we'll see what kind of success he can have there. Maybe they bring him out of the bullpen. Young pitchers that they still have, Joe Ryan, Ober, and Dobnak. And of course, they have the closer in Taylor Rogers. They have a lot of young pitching that they have right now. A lot of young outfielders as well coming. So maybe this team sees it as a time to push forward instead of middling around or rebuilding entirely. It looks like Correa believes they are ready to win as well. That's why he signed the big contract there. But it seems like Carlos Correa is as far as this team is going to go. As far as he can lead them, that's as far as this team is going to go. Maybe they win the division. You'll have to stick around and find out. The last team we need to go over is going to be the Chicago White Sox. The offense, all full of young stars that they have on there. Eloy Jimenez, Luis Robert, Andrew Vaughn was a rookie last year. Gavin Sheets is another young player, supplemented by some older veterans who've had a lot of success. Looking at Jose Abreu, who's had nothing but success ever since he came over from Cuba, I believe. Yasmani Grandal is still there at catcher. There was some debate whether or not he would be there after the younger catchers have had some success last year for the White Sox. They did bring in Josh Donaldson to take over that second base role. Yoan Moncada now is your third baseman. The lineup seems pretty set. They have a pretty nice, solid lineup there. The trade that they made last year for Nomar Mazara just didn't work out. Andrew Vaughn has found some success, but people thought he was going to be a first baseman. Does he have enough athleticism to stick in the outfield? We shall see. Maybe they go after a defensive outfielder, somebody who can be that fourth outfield type for them as the playoffs begin. Looking at the rotation, a lot of similar pitchers is what I see here. A lot of players who could break out but still need to prove themselves. Lucas Giolito had a nice season last year. Lance Lynn has been nothing but a stalwart in the rotation, 6-7 innings every single start. Dylan Cease, solid pitcher as well. Dallas Keuchel was their free agent addition that they made from the Houston Astros a year ago. He pitched well for them last year as well, but he's not a strikeout pitcher, pitches more towards contact. Lance Lynn is more of the strikeout artist, so they got a little bit of a mix there. Michael Kopech is the number 5 starter this year, more than likely. We'll see if he can remain healthy for 162 games. Do I see him making 30 starts this year? Probably not. In fact, I expect him to end up in the bullpen again unless he can establish himself as a regular starter for them, being able to go 5, 6, 7 innings every single start and not just a few before he loses his command. That's been the issue with Michael Kopech. Great arm, great fastball, great velocity, but he loses his command or has injury issues. Maybe they move him back to the bullpen to protect him from himself. Looking at the bullpen, the White Sox have the best bullpen in all of baseball. Liam Hendricks is your closer. Craig Kimbrell is back there as well. They've made a few other additions to the back end of that bullpen as well. That bullpen is loaded. If you have a lead going into the 7th inning, or if the White Sox have a lead going into the 7th inning, they aren't giving it up very often at all. The one issue that they did have last year in the bullpen is that Craig Kimbrell did not pitch well outside of the closer role. So we'll see after another year of being out of that closer role if it helps him find some regularity, some performance improvements, those kinds of things. Liam Hendricks, though, is very demonstrative on the mound, just like Kimbrell was when he was the closer. That menacing stare that he had to opposing hitters. So you can kind of see the back end of that bullpen is stacked. We'll see if the White Sox have that success. Prospects, they have a lot of young talent already on the way, but most of it is already in the big leagues. So they've got a lot of young talent on their team. Maybe they make a deadline addition with all that young talent. I still could see an outfielder being an addition here, like I mentioned. Maybe a star pitcher as well. Max Scherzer last year went to the Dodgers. There were some rumors, of course, that he could go to the San Diego Padres. The White Sox tipped their hat in that, tipped their nose and dipped their toe in that scale anyway, and just weren't able to get to that asking price for him. I don't expect them to get somebody like that, but somebody of a very nice starting pitcher would help them possibly make it a deep run into the postseason. Now, looking at the division itself as a whole, where I expect this to go, there's a lot of different options that you have. You can go the Twins way if you believe Carlos Correa makes the Twins a winner. You can go the Guardians way if you just believe in their model of consistency and Shane Bieber, or you can go with the team I believe is going to win the division in the Chicago White Sox. The White Sox just have too much going for them. That bullpen is really the main thing for them. If they can get enough performance out of their starting rotation, that bullpen should do just fine. That way they don't have to overwork it as the season progresses. The one worry I do have is if they don't have enough starting pitching, that bullpen becomes a little bit more of a liability the more and more and more it's used. If you overuse your relievers during the season, during the postseason, it's just not going to be that effective, and we'll see how effective they can be with all that, with all those issues. The one thing that I do like about this division is all of the intrigue with the Minnesota Twins, the moves that they've made. They're actually going for it. They're not conceding the division to the White Sox. I fully expect them to be in playoff contention. Whether or not they make the playoffs will depend on that starting rotation and how good Carlos Correa plays with the Minnesota Twins. Is he able to have a nice platform year, go back into free agency and get that 10-year, $325 million contract that he was looking for? Maybe. Scott Boras is his agent, but I don't expect the Twins to have a bad year at all. They're going to have a nice, solid year with Carlos Correa. It's just a matter of whether or not that starting pitching could hold up. For the Guardians, like I already mentioned, I expect them to finish third in this division. Jose Ramirez will probably be moved before the deadline. Shane Bieber is the main guy you have there. They've done really well getting a lot of their starting pitching over the years. We'll see if they can do so again here. Shane Bieber, again, is their best pitcher. Savali as well. Plesac probably is going to be moved at the deadline as well. Starting pitching probably at the deadline is going to get a little bit better price than they are now. That's why we saw the Oakland A's hold off on trading Frankie Montas and Sean Manaea before the season began, and the Rays only traded one of their starters in Sonny Gray and held on to Tyler Mahle and Luis Castillo. From a Guardians perspective, this This year is going to be to see how much success you can have with the rest of your starters and to see if your outfielders can finally establish themselves as big leaguers. Are they able to make that transition from top prospect or middling prospect to major league regular? I don't see it happening or them having enough success with that formula. I believe they should go out and get a guy like Michael Conforto, but they won't. And so that's why I have them finishing third. The Tigers should have some nice improvements this year with AJ Hinch as the manager again, like I mentioned. Javier Baez should bring some leadership and enthusiasm to that lineup. The youthful starting pitching that they have brought or supplemented with Eduardo Rodriguez, while talented, is not going to have the same success I believe that they did a year ago. I also believe that the injuries will start to catch up with that starting staff, and I don't think the Tigers have enough to be able to overcome any of those type of problems. Torkelson will be the one thing you want to keep an eye on if you're a Tigers fan. Does he become the next Miggy Cabrera? Miggy Cabrera is going to probably be entering in his final year or two with the Tigers. We'll see how he finishes out his career. Torkelson's probably going to be the next leader of this team. We'll see if he can take that torch from Miggy Cabrera. Last in this division is going to be the Royals with Bobby Witt Jr. It's going to be the beginning and end of the conversation for them. The swan song year for Zach Greinke as well. So if you're a Royals fan, buckle up. It's going to be a long year for you. Look forward to the draft, and hopefully next year will be better. But again, White Sox 1, Twins 2, Guardians 3, not the Indians, Guardians. They're no longer the Cleveland Indians. 4, Tigers, and 5, the Royals. Let us know in the comment section what you think, where your favorite team is going to end up in this division, what you think of the acquisition of Carlos Correa for the Minnesota Twins, beating the New York Yankees for the first time, really, for a major league free agent. And the Yankees actually taking players off the Minnesota Twins, the bad contracts that they had in Josh Donaldson in order to make it happen. It's going to be a fascinating year for the Central, but again, White Sox, Twins, Guardians, Tigers, and Royals. Thank you for joining our stream. Remember to hit that subscribe button. Thank you, and welcome back to the Upside.